Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It was fantastic to be invited here by Liam. When I looked at the delegate list on Eventbrite, it was like a who's who of mind mapping. I have worked with probably over a third of you, but I feel like I know most of you from your Twitter accounts and from your blogs. So what a great group of people we have in the audience today. I think Liam is absolutely right. This hasn't been done in the way it has been done today before, and I think we should all give Liam a round of applause before we start for doing such a great cause. And just to lead on from what the first gentleman was saying, you know, we are in this for a greater cause, so we do need to work together. So well done, Liam. I'd like to start by quoting Henry Ford. Henry Ford said that thinking is the hardest work there is, which is why so few of us engage in it. Thinking is the hardest work there is, which is why so few of us engage in it. And I think that all of us here have to give ourselves a pat on the back, because we are helping people to think. It doesn't matter whether you're a trainer, whether you're a software developer. In the space that we work in, we are helping people to think better. We are what we think, so if we think better, we can become better people. It was interesting. I was on the train here yesterday, and I was listening to a conversation to three gentlemen, all in suits. They were going to an educational technology conference. And they were talking about how the use of technology was becoming detrimental in schools. And their example was that all of these online calendars and everyone can see what you're doing was leading to the result that people were having to fill up their diaries so that when people looked at their calendar, which they shared publicly, it looked like they had things to do. Now, what I liked about these guys is they were saying, look, we've got to tell our team to start blocking off reflective time in their diary so they don't feel embarrassed to do so. But this is a key point, because people don't have time to think anymore. We're in a world where everything is moving very, very quickly. It's scary. You know, this is the first time in human history that people have spent so much time in front of a black box. And this black box is starting to dictate how we think. So an industry like ours is allowing people to reflect. It's helping people to have clarity of thought. It's helping people to be more productive. So what we're doing is making a difference, and it's making a big difference. A little bit about myself. Liam mentioned that I was the chief executive of ThinkBuzan. For those of you that don't know my background, I just want to share it with you quickly so you can understand where I've come from in sort of my relationship with mind mapping. I didn't do particularly well in school. I didn't do particularly badly. I'd say I was average. I set up my first company when I was 16. Had a computer game published. It was an American football game. And that gave me the drive to really work for myself. I felt I wanted to do something on my own. I sold my first business by the time I was 26. And then I was running a PLC after that for 7 years. That was very exciting. And I had a love for combining technology with modern brain-based learning theories and techniques. I loved the technology, but I also loved the underlying theory. And I actually felt that there was a bit of a divide, because people were getting very excited about technology sort of 15 years ago, and they were actually letting the technology drive the process. And that was a big mistake. You know, the internet came along, and schools started using the internet for learning. And they made a mistake. It just became an electronic book. Well, actually, most children prefer a book that they can hold and play with. And I was analysing, well, what processes are very effective? And the mind mapping process, I thought, was an incredible process. And I thought, well, I want to get involved with that. And it was quite interesting, because before I got involved with the mind mapping directly, I communicated with Tony about software. This is the logo for our iMindMap software. And I kept saying to Tony, I love the process, but the problem is I can't duplicate on a computer what I can do by hand. And I really wanted to do it. For several years I used to write to Tony, and Tony was saying, yeah, well, it's happening and things are progressing, and that was brilliant. And eventually I made the decision. I thought, right, I want to work with this chap called Buzan, and I want to see if we can duplicate his process. So I went to my board of directors. It was a PLC that I'd established. It was one of the fastest growing companies in Europe. I was chief executive. I'm not saying this to boast. I'll explain why I'm saying this. We had 7 years of straight growth. And I went to my board of directors. There were 7 of us. And I pitched the idea of working in the mind mapping space. Now, we were working in the educational technology space at the time. And I thought, there is no way my board of directors wouldn't want to get on board with this concept of mind mapping. And they outvoted me 6 to 1, 6 to 1 against. They said, no way. I said, what's all this about? You know, we're not going to make any money from this. And I said, well, actually, it's not all about making money, but if you do something well, the money will come afterwards. And in fact, they would not back me. Now, this was my own company that I set up. I didn't have control anymore because of all the shareholders. So my belief was so strong that I decided to resign from my own company so that I could work in this space. And I have absolute belief in what we're doing, as do all of you. I know that because I've met so many of you, and you have that same belief. You know, we are of a common mind and a common goal. And that's really where the journey with iMindMap started. So I started working with Tony. I pulled a team of people together to actually make it happen. Some of you are here who were there at the beginning. And it was an exciting journey. And that's really why we are all here today in a way, because we've all been touched by it in some way. I think it's appropriate today that we do talk about Tony. Obviously, I represent the Buzan organization. But it's very rare, I think, that you meet an individual who can make such a profound difference on the way you live your life. And Tony is one of those individuals. It's probably even rarer that you can meet an individual that makes a profound difference to the lives of millions of people. And Tony has done that. And arguably, we are here today because of what he's done over the last 40 years. I mean, he's been developing his process for 40 years, as I said. Many of you would have read Tony's books. Has everyone read Tony's books here? It is interesting because times are changing. I go around the world and I ask people, how do you find out about mind mapping? And whereas before it would always be Tony's books, now it's changing. Now people are starting to put their hands up for, mind mapping software. Then they find out about Tony. Now that's a good thing. That means us as an industry are actually taking it forward. We're using a new channel to reach millions of people that otherwise haven't been reached. Tony has publicized it through his TV series, through his books, through his lectures. I think the best lecture I ever went to was the one at the Albert Hall. Was anyone there at the Albert Hall? We had 9,000 children. Fantastic. 9,000 children in 2 sessions. We're at the Albert Hall, free of charge, to see Tony teach them about mind mapping. That's what it's all about. It's absolutely fantastic. Now, Tony couldn't be with us today, but he has given me a message to share with everyone. So I'd like to read it out. I had to take some of the words out that Tony uses because he likes to use much bigger words than I. My warmest regards to all of you, and apologies for being unable to attend on this incredibly exciting day. I shall be keenly watching for the ripples of inspiration that will no doubt be appearing across Twitter. Congratulations especially to Mr. Liam Hughes for bringing the mind mapping community together for this unprecedented event, and for his incredible dedication to promoting the process in extremely innovative ways. I have been in the business of improving the way people think for over 40 years, and consider myself beyond fortunate to have witnessed the progression of mind mapping, of the mind mapping process, from something that was dismissed by many at first as cartoonish and whimsical, to something that is now taught as part of curriculums and used by small businesses, global corporations, royal families and governments alike. Computer mind maps have really come of age with powerful and creative functionality. And for me, the advent of iMindMap was the realization of a dream. But hand-drawn mind maps still have relevance and will continue to be the first port of call where personal physical contact, aesthetic movement, more and more comprehensive memory and more immediate creativity are required. Whether drawn by hand or used as a software tool, it is the process itself that is crucial and that takes away the limitations of traditional learning techniques and creativity techniques. I would also like to thank all of you for your contribution towards the explosion in visual thinking that I have witnessed in recent years. You who practice, preach and promote visual thinking are helping children and adults around the world. It has been my life's work to develop a process that fully utilized and exploited the incredible potential of our brains, and to see more and more people beginning to realize that potential every day is an inspiration. Thank you all. Tony Buzan. Now, we're here today to talk about modernizing mind mapping. And I struggled with that one a little bit. After speaking to Liam, I thought, modernizing, is that the right word? And I thought perhaps a better word is progressing. You know, we are all here today furthering the cause of mind mapping and progressing it, whether it's in technology or whether it's in cognitive science. And I think when we look at where we've come from, if you look at Porphyry's trees, if you look at Lull's circles, if you look at Collins' semantic networks, we can see how we've evolved over the period of time and will continue to evolve in the process that we're doing. In terms of how we're doing it, well, we're doing it in many ways. It's not just about the technology. It's about the promotion of mind mapping as a process. It's about getting across the message to people so that they will actually try it, experience it. Because those that do, or rather those that do and are taught how to do it properly, really get so much benefit from it. And I think this is how we should modernize and progress it. Everything we're doing is doing that, but it's more than just the technology. We have to promote it. Mind Maps for Business was the first book I wrote with Tony. It was a great concept. And one of the ways we thought we could get more adoption of mind mapping was by showing how it could be integrated with other processes. Mind mapping is an interesting one. It's a thinking tool, and it can be used for any thinking process, which means it can be added to any process that people are using. Now, people are so inundated with new strategies, methodologies, and processes, it can be difficult to get people to look at something new. So with this book, we took a different approach, and we looked at processes that were very popular and showed how they could be made even better. What I found very interesting is I had to write to a lot of people, Michael Porter's and Boston Consulting Groups, Accenture, and all of these different types of organizations, and ask if I could show how the processes that they've created could be made better by the use of mind mapping. And I thought I would get quite a few rejections because, you know, that's almost saying, well, my process isn't good enough. You've got to show people how to make it better. I did not get one single rejection. So it was absolutely fantastic. And then my second book, which was Grasp, which wasn't about mind mapping, but it was about thinking. Again, that was another way of promoting what we're doing here. It's metacognition, thinking about thinking. So in terms of technology, what are we doing to modernize or progress mind mapping? Well, actually, I'm going to tell you about some of the mistakes we made as well, but I'll do that a little bit later. But in terms of what we're doing now is we've changed in terms of what we focus on. You would have noticed that we've been focusing on 3D mind mapping quite a lot. And it is true 3D mind maps. People say, well, it's a 2D mind map in a 3D space. But it is true 3D mind mapping. And the whole point of using 3D is to create more stimulus. You know, creativity is about stimulating the brain. 3 dimensions stimulate the brain. That's how we see. I'm down to 5 minutes. I'm going to have to speed up. But we've really struggled because everyone says to us, yeah, I love 3D, but I want it to go off in all these different directions. But every time we prototype it, it's confusing to the brain. It's confusing to the people that use it. There's too much distraction. But we'll continue to work on it. Other ways that we are working in terms of technology at making the process smoother is actually focusing less on the technology. You'll notice quite a lot of revisions this year from us in terms of the way the product looks and feels. We want to try and remove the technology as much as possible. It's the process that's important. So it's minimalizing everything, less buttons, making things more context sensitive. Whatever we must do in this industry, we must not let our excitement for technology get in the way of the benefits of the process itself. And that's the one thing I would ask all of you. And we made some mistakes, and I'll come on to those in a little bit. So what's the future going to bring? Well, if you look at how this space has developed over the last decade, it's fantastic. You know, we have hundreds of millions of people mind mapping. But let's not get too excited. That's a lot of people. But one has to ask a fundamental question, why doesn't everyone use mind mapping and visual thinking processes as a normal part of their daily life? Why is it we have to be educating a reasonable number, but still a small percentage of the whole world? You know, we've got a lot further to go, and we need to do this together. And this is why events like this, where we can pull all of us together, is so important. Really quick test, because I'm running out of time. Look at those. This is not a trick, by the way. Look at those shapes. Identify one of the shapes that is unique, and think to yourself why that one shape is unique. Right, who thought A was unique? Why? What about B? Who had B? Did anyone have B? No one with B? What about C? Why? Straight lines. B actually is the only one with a curve and a straight line. What about D? Anyone pick D? Any reasons? Asymmetrical. E? Any reasons?
It's got a re-entrance in it.
It's got a re-entrance in it. We are all right. Now, we've got to be very, very careful in our industry. And, you know, one of the things I've noticed since being in this industry is how polite everyone is to each other. All of us whom are competitors, both in the commercial and free space, are very polite to each other. And I think that's really important. Because when people say to me, well, which is the best software to use? I say, well, I'm biased. Of course, it's going to be iMindMap. However, maybe you should try other things as well and see what works for you. So let's not get too, well, let's avoid confirmational bias on what we do is right. And let's look at the industry as a whole to see how we can make it better. This is still in its infancy. You know, there's a lot of room for it to grow, and it has to help other people. But let's not forget hand-drawn mind maps. I'm down to 1 minute. Let's not forget hand-drawn mind maps, because not all of the world has access to technology. This is an event we held. It was a free event in Sierra Leone. We donated 3,000 books to libraries in Sierra Leone. Tony was there to train the children. Now, these children were mind mapping in the mud. They were mind mapping in sand. So let's not get too excited about the technology. Let's focus on the process. If I had music, I'd be playing Who Let the Dogs Out. Now, what I want to explain about this is that, well, metaphor. Imagine yourself at a neighbour's house. Your neighbour has a big dog. It's 10 o'clock at night. Lots of people in the street have big dogs. Your neighbour puts the dog out into the yard. The dog starts barking. What happens to the rest of the neighbourhood? What happens to the rest of the dogs in the neighbourhood? They all start barking. We've got to be very very aware in our industry this is what we do. This is one of the mistakes that we make in terms of we tend to try and copy each other's features. We are in a creative space. I'm out. We are in a creative space, and we must come up with our own ways forward to progress things. So if I can just finish by thanking all of you for doing what you're doing in this visual space and mind mapping space, and thank Liam again. I'd like to also thank the ThinkBuzan team and all the ThinkBuzan trainers that are here today. You know, it really does help take it all forward. So thank you all very much.